So, anyways, Tebogo, first of all, I want to actually just thank you for, and I know I'm looking at you, I'm so rude. I want to thank you for joining me on I Bumped Into. It's been about a year or a year and 2 months since I last did a podcast. So, yeah, I'm still a bit rusty.
Okay, loosening up. You're kind of oiling it up
Yeah,
today.
just holding it up and taking it slow. But I just want to thank you for obviously just taking the time out of your busy schedule. Yeah, because yeah, you obviously work for the biggest tech company in
In
the
the
world.
world.
No, but in all seriousness, I want to thank you for your time. I mean, time is probably our most valuable resource. So, how we're just gonna structure this? Like, we're just gonna jump around. Because when I was thinking about where would we start, around attachment theory, around emotional needs, around core wounds, there's so many starting points, right? And entry points, I'd rather even say that. But before we get there, I want you to just introduce yourself. I think I'd like to get a background of who you are, but more specifically, how did you end up, as a, I don't know what's the right terminology,
It's
attachment
okay.
theorist,
No, I'm not an
maybe?
attachment theorist.
But
I'm actually I'm a coach. I'm just a coach.
okay, attachment theory coach, right?
I'm an
We do.
IAT coach, but we'll get into what IAT actually is as we kind of have the discussion or should I just
Yes.
jump in?
Yeah, so if you can just tell me, how do you actually end up being an IAT
IAT.
coach?
Yeah. Okay, so firstly, IAT stands for Integrated Attachment Theory.
Mm-hmm.
Um, how I ended up in integrated attachment theory as a coach specifically is through working on myself first, actually, because I did not realize that I was completely out of touch with my emotions. I had no relationship with my emotions before. Like many years ago, I had no relationship with emotions. So after something that forced me, an event, an experience that forced me to kind of get in touch with them. That's the point at which I started exploring. So I had dabbled in therapy back in varsity. I was trying to figure out what was going on because I was having some difficulty, and then started therapy. Took a while for me to actually adjust to it, actually, because you're used to. And I hope you don't mind my rambling here, but
No, of course.
so you're used to, for example, when you say, for example, you can't write an exam, you can't go write an exam.
Yeah.
Saying I can't write an exam because I broke my leg
Mm-hmm.
is tangible. You can see the broken leg. You
Sure.
know you're in pain. It's kind of like an easy, acceptable excuse conventionally,
Sure.
right? But when you go to the exam room and you're like, I can't write an exam because I'm anxious, or I've got an anxiety attack or a panic attack, that's something that's very difficult to perceive. So for me, it was that type of thing that we can talk about a broken leg or a flu or whatever, but if we talk about mental health, at that point, mental health for me was something completely foreign.
And just, sorry, just on that, because now I'm very curious and I'll always go off the path.
That's
But
fine.
anyways,
I
like,
can talk about
just
this all day, so it's fine.
just on your anxiousness, right? So
Yeah.
did you? I mean, you're in high school. I don't want to also stereotype, a race or even a gender. Like, did you know what you were feeling? Did you know what anxiousness is?
No.
Number one. Oh, you
No.
didn't. You just felt.
I
What
didn't.
did you
I
feel?
couldn't figure out why I was blacking out.
Oh, okay.
I couldn't figure out why I was blacking out. So I was like, no, man, I'm not stupid. Because like I was getting scholarships. I was getting invited to conferences for like my own brain children. So I was like, okay, so why am I blacking out then? I'm clearly smart.
Yeah.
So what's going on? And then that's when I decided to go to this one place where there were master's students that were doing psychotherapy, or I don't know what it's called, but like there were psychologists in training. And that's where my journey started. That's where my love for psychology started. I didn't know it existed until that point.
Sure.
So went in there and I was like, guys, and I've never reflected on this journey
Oh,
actually.
wow.
So
Okay.
I can tell just from what I'm feeling. I'm like, oh, what's that? So I went there and I was like, guys, something's wrong. I have no clue what it is. And then that's when the journey started. And then long story short, eventually I realized that like emotions and mental health is an actual thing. And it took a while, right? It took a while for me to accept because I was like, in the same way that I explained before, that like broken leg, flu,
Yeah.
any type of illness, you can actually justify that I'm unable to function because of this ailment.
Sure.
But with mental health at the time, for me, it was difficult to perceive that you can say you're unable to function because of a mental ailment. What do you mean? We can't see that. What do you mean?
Yeah.
So eventually I accepted it after a while. After a while, then I got to terms with the fact that, oh, it's a thing. And then this one therapist told me, have you heard of attachment theory? And I was like, no.
And so I'm trying to follow the timeline as well. Like, when is this? This is clearly after high school
Yeah,
varsity.
it was varsity.
Okay. Interesting. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the therapist is like, have you heard of attachment theory? And I was like, no. And she was like, okay, explore it one day.
Oh.
And then I left it at that.
Mm-hmm.
Never explored it until my first heartbreak. Which, incidentally, I did not even know was heartbreak. I didn't even know it was heartbreak. Only recently, like in the past, let's say 3 to 5 years, did I
Sure.
figure out that was heartbreak, man. That was heartbreak. Your heart was broken.
And just on that heartbreak, like, and we'll get into, like identifying emotions and stuff like that. But just if you can describe at that time, because you didn't know it was heartbreak, like, what did you feel? Like, what was going on with you? Like, I don't know if you can describe it.
It was intensity that made it difficult to like function normally. Lost my appetite, but I felt like it was normal. I was like, me, just don't feel like eating. Yeah, things are rough. I was completely disconnected from my emotions. You don't understand. I didn't know what anger was. I didn't know what sadness was. I did not know emotion at all. So, yeah, cue first heartbreak, which I didn't even know was heartbreak. I was just like, what is happening? What am I feeling? What
Sure.
is this?
Yeah.
Like, what is going on? And then, I started looking at attachment theory, and I just started getting sucked in. I got sucked in. And eventually I stumbled across the videos of a woman named Thais Gibson.
Okay.
Amazingly intelligent woman.
Sure. Shout
she's-
out to Thais. Yeah. Shout out.
She's amazingly intelligent. And she just has such a deep knowledge of attachment theory, but not just attachment theory, but attachment theory along with the subconscious mind. And that's what makes it different. It's almost like you can think of it almost as like integrated attachment theory, which is what she came up with, like Gibson integrated attachment theory, which is what I'm certified in.
Sure.
You can think of it as applied attachment theory
Sure.
because it's very practical. It teaches you to understand yourself, to go into the depths of your subconscious mind, literally without even hypnotizing yourself.
Okay.
Or you can even get yourself into a semi-hypnotic state and actually dig in there. And those elements of integrated attachment theory, they continue to suck me in. I still use the tools to this day. I use them on my clients. It's just it's a rabbit hole I'm happy to disappear into all the time.
Before we before we all get lost in the different terminologies, I'll probably say, because we can get into attachment theory, but I've been a client of yours, so it's almost like I feel like there's foundations that lead up to this whole thing called integrated attachment theory, right?
Yeah.
And originally, we were speaking about this. We could start by defining what integrated attachment theory is, but I feel like we can get lost because there's so much that can happen. So I'd love to start off with something that I think is universal, and then we can just go down the rabbit hole from there.
Sure.
And I think the main question, this goes back even into Buddhist times, or Buddhism as well, the whole suffering, right? And you suffer because you desire. There's many...
You suffer because
you desire. So if you stop desiring,
interesting.
you stop suffering. It's like an old Buddhist text, but there's different interpretations of it. But anyway, sorry, I'm now going to go on a rant,
It's okay.
But anyways, the core theme around just human suffering. So I want to start there. Like, why do we suffer as humans? Like, let's take it from there.
Right. So I'm always susceptible to having my mind changed. I just want to put that disclaimer out. That's how we grow. If you're adaptable, you'll grow. Your intelligence will increase. You become relatable. So the reason I say that is because my current stance and what is currently believable to me and proven is there will only ever be two reasons. Currently, I'm aware of only two reasons for emotional discomfort. Because there's a difference between emotional pain and suffering.
Okay.
There's a clear distinction between the two, and I'll explain it just now. Now, the reason why we suffer, very simply speaking, is because of the things we tell ourselves, the way that we interpret things that happen to us. That's the first reason. Okay, you can think of those as stories. The meaning that we allocate to events that we either are subjected to or that we observe.
Sure.
Okay, that's the first reason. The second reason that we will experience emotional discomfort, and I'll put pain and suffering into the bucket of emotional discomfort. The second reason that you will experience emotional discomfort is as a result of unmet needs. So things that have to be in place for you to feel like you're okay at a basic level, to feel like you're okay, at best like you're thriving. When those things are not in place, it's classified as an unmet need.
Sure.
So the two reasons would be the stories we tell ourselves, so the meaning we create, our interpretations, and the second reason is unmet needs. And any type of discomfort will always boil down to these two things. You can either experience them individually
Sure.
or together.
Okay.
And that's the main reason we suffer.
Okay.
And by understanding that, you can literally remove almost any type of suffering. If you can just
Oh,
get
that's a big
down
claim.
to... No, I know it is a big claim. That's what I'm saying. So that's my current stance at the moment, and I'm yet to see an alternative. So if we're saying in the absence of things like legitimate mental illness, so things that are diagnosed by means of psychiatry, for example, I'm inclined to believe that those add an additional maybe complexity. But in the absence of those, right, if we're talking just pure emotional discomfort, it boils down to those two reasons.
Okay. Lots to take in.
We can unpack
No,
any
no. I want.
example. We can
no,
unpack any example.
There's a lot I want to talk about, Tebogo. So, because I mean, we can speak about suffering and emotional needs for 60 minutes, right? With different
Yes.
examples and even share stories. Maybe it's a
Yes.
second podcast. Let's see. But I want to just go back to the distinction between emotional pain and emotional suffering. What is the difference? Because you said you're going to go back to that, right? So,
Yes.
can you can you talk me through that?
Sure. So, pain, excuse me, is normal and necessary. It's not pleasant. Ideally, we shouldn't have it, but it helps, right? I'll give you a simple example. How do you know you're starved?
Because you're hungry, right? And your stomach is going to contract. I mean, I don't know the physiology.
How does it
Right.
feel?
Well, I mean, there's pain in the stomach, right?
You experience hunger pangs, right? You get pangs in your stomach. And so you act
Sure.
on that, right? That feeling. Emotions work the same way, right? An emotion will tell you, and I'm talking about pain here. An emotion will tell you when you are in pain,
Okay.
right? So sadness, disappointment, anger, right? They call them negative emotions, but I don't like to put value judgments on emotions. They're just signals. So pain is a signal, right? That's communicated to you through emotions that tells you that there's a need that is not met. In the same way, hunger tells you that you need to eat. You need to eat, right? If I pinch you right now, if I pinch you, you know that you need to move, you need to jerk your hand, or you need to tell me that, hey, don't do that, right? You are inclined to act based on what you are feeling.
Sure.
So pain just tells us that there's something that you need to do to get yourself back to a state of being okay, in essence, right? That's pain.
Okay.
Suffering, on the other hand, will be the stories that you tell yourself about the pain. So if I pinch you under secure circumstances, right, where in the absence of any interpretation, if I pinch you, you move, problem solved, right? Now, if we're talking about stories now, in the presence of suffering, if we're talking about suffering, if I pinch you and then you immediately go like, I always knew she never liked me. She's actually a bad person. She's disrespecting me. I will never be able to find anyone that treats me with respect. I'm actually going to spend my life alone. I'm better off alone because every time I'm around someone, they're going to cause me some type of pain, right? You've told yourself multiple stories. It goes from pain and now it goes into suffering, which is an unnecessary and long period of, like, it's extended and unnecessary pain. That's suffering. It's the stories we tell ourselves about the unmet need, right? So I pinched you and I took away, you ended up with an unmet need for, let's call it maybe safety or comfort, right? I made you uncomfortable. So you now are sitting with an unmet need for comfort. The easy route is just get comfortable, move away from me if I'm going to pinch you, right? Or tell me to stop doing that, right? If we move into suffering, though, that's a matter of like, I pinch you and then you start telling all these stories. He doesn't like me. I always knew he didn't like me. Nobody likes me. I'm going to end up alone for the rest of my life, etc. That is suffering. It's the stories we tell ourselves about the unmet need.
And we're going to get to so many nodes we can go from here. We're going to get to also just the basic human needs. It's funny how you mentioned, the whole story we tell ourselves, because, I mean, like, even in Stoicism, they speak about it's not the event itself that is bad. It's our interpretation of the event, right?
100%.
So you see something happen and then you obviously tell a story. You have to make sense of it. So it's quite interesting how it all actually ties in, right?
Yes,
It's
exactly.
events is neither good or bad.
It's what
just
you
your
make of it.
interpretation. Yeah. So,
Yes.
so okay, let me also reframe my question, because maybe I also wasn't clear. I'm just looking for an example. Look, I know you want a scenario, but what is like an unmet need? I'd love for you to give me an unmet need. Maybe make up a scenario, because
Okay.
sometimes I remember when we also did this, we had to go through examples for you to identify unmet needs. So
Yeah.
maybe
And like actual life
yeah,
experiences.
yeah. So maybe if you can give me an example, and then how would you go about solving that? Like as an example.
Okay. So let's say, for example, I miss my partner, right? And, okay, I just thought of an example. So let's say, for example, my partner and I have not we've been really busy for the week. And maybe we haven't had date night. We haven't really had a quality conversation. We haven't spoken much at all. We haven't really like engaged a lot during the week. And finally, when I see him at the end of the week, he's like, okay, I'm going to come see you on Saturday. And I'm like, cool. He comes on Saturday. And over the week, I've kind of been thinking also he's not going to call, or like, or we're not going to connect. I understand you can be busy, but like not that busy, you know? And then he comes and he sees me. We meet up at the end of the week, right? And he comes and I am offish, right? And then I pick a fight. And then he's like, we literally have not seen each other the whole week. This is the one chance we have to be with each other, and you're going to pick a fight. Right? Now, we're going to pause it there. So a fight ensues. Like they get into it, right? Like she's going to pick on something small, and then he gets defensive, and then there's a back and forth, right? Now, let's just pause that scenario right there.
Sure.
Okay? He came and he saw me at the end of the week, and he left the glass, let's say, on the kitchen counter when he came to visit. And then that causes the fight, right? I pick a fight over the glass, right? So I've got a disproportionate reaction to the glass being left on the table. In that scenario, when he leaves that glass on the table, perhaps I start telling myself stories. He's so disrespectful. He doesn't care about me. He knows I like a clean kitchen, and yet here he is leaving that glass on the kitchen counter.
Sure.
He's so inconsiderate because he can't even think to rinse the glass and put it away or whatever, right? I start telling myself all these stories. And then by the time I talk to him, it's an explosion.
Ooh.
Right? And remember, we haven't seen each other the whole week and we're going to argue about a glass left on the kitchen counter. Right? Now, we've seen the triggering event. The glass was left on the kitchen counter.
Sure.
But there's some underlying things there. There's some resentment there, actually. Let's identify the emotions. So from all these stories, if you're telling yourself he's so inconsiderate, he's disrespectful, he doesn't care about me, if you tell yourself those stories, how do those kinds of things make you feel? If you've got these types of thoughts going through your mind, how do you feel? How do they make you feel? I'm being disrespected. What kind of an emotion is that going to evoke from you? Maybe anger, or some other emotion,
Sure.
right? I'm unloved. He doesn't care about me. He doesn't love me. Like, he's so inconsiderate, right? You'll probably feel sad, right? I expected that he would have put the glass in the counter at least, or in the sink at least,
Sure.
or rinsed it and put it away. You're gonna feel disappointed, right? And those are the emotions, right? From that, we identify what it actually triggered in you, right? I'm gonna leave the wounds on their own for now because that's a whole other topic on its own. But if you look at this carefully, I would have preferred for him to maybe wash the glass and put it away,
Yeah.
right? So there's an unmet need for consideration, for
Sure.
example, right? But now I've also got all these other things that came from our week away from each other, right? So I was feeling disconnected from him, right? I would have thought that maybe because we've spent the week away from each other, he would have wanted to make me happy at least by washing the glass and putting it away.
Yes.
He's so inconsiderate,
Sure.
you know? But there was a need for feeling considered, right? Which went unmet, right? An even bigger one, I would say, because you've spent a week away from each other, you've been busy and whatever, is disconnection.
Okay.
Okay? So there was a need for connection. So there are a couple of needs that you can identify, and you can find them by looking at what would you have preferred to happen instead.
Sure.
What would have made you feel better in that scenario, right? And that's how you find the needs. So for that specific scenario, there are a couple of unmet needs. We've identified consideration, we've identified connection, we've identified, I don't know, care,
Yeah.
right? And that's how you would go about kind of finding the need. There are a couple of more, obviously, more details I can go into, but for purposes of this example and highlighting that there are certain unmet needs and stories that cause the suffering as a result of that one very simple event, you can boil them down and ultimately remove the suffering attached to that event. So that's one example of needs going unmet.
Right. Okay. And then just and I know there's different tools on this, the emotional regulation. Yeah, give me. How would you solve that now? That
What?
need.
Which need?
The one you just spoke about now, right?
Okay. So there are two parts to it, and how you would solve for it is you can either do it independently, or you can get the need met through somebody else. Now, when it comes to attachment theory, you have people that are more avoidant leaning, and you have people that are more anxious leaning. Right, we haven't really spoken about attachment styles just yet, but you've got people who are avoidant. These are people who don't really, they've got a big fear of vulnerability.
Yeah.
And you've got anxious people who get their needs met primarily through other people.
Sure.
So if you are on this side, the avoidance side of the spectrum, generally what I would recommend is for you to get used to getting your needs met through other people. Because people who are avoidant tend to not be comfortable with getting their needs met through other people. It's people who were disappointed a lot, to be honest. It's people who, when they needed someone, no one was there. And so they had to adapt. And they learned that for stuff to get done, for my needs to get met, I have to do it myself. Right? I cannot ask. I cannot show vulnerability in that way. So for someone like that, I would recommend stepping outside, obviously little by little, and asking for your needs to be met through the relevant person, through other people. Right? So for example, if you're avoidant leaning, and you had that scenario in the kitchen where the couple was arguing over the glass that was not rinsed and left on the kitchen counter, my recommendation would be you need to communicate your need, right? When you left the glass on the counter, it made me feel like I'm not being considered, like you don't care about me. I would prefer next time if you could please put the glass either in the sink or if you could please wash it. I'd really feel supported by you. I'd feel cared for by you.
You
So
have this conversation though when maybe the what is it, the tide is settled, and the storm maybe might break into a fight, right? So I think what would be key in all of this is to have this conversation when there's not everyone is not emotionally charged, right? Because you could be like, I would appreciate it if you know what I mean.
Yes.
Yeah, well, how you're saying it right now, I'm like, how? What's okuluma? Like, I hear you. Okay, you know.
Yes. So here's the thing, and this is, I will always be an advocate for this. I don't know, man. I'm just the biggest advocate for it. Emotional regulation. To
Sure.
put it simply, very, very simply, even though I don't like the term, to kind of calm yourself down, to get yourself to a state of like emotional equilibrium, emotional balance, right? Before you communicate anything. And you can leverage your ability to take a step back away from that charged situation and be like, okay, look, I'm feeling quite charged right now. Can I please just like take a few moments to go and calm down wherever.
Okay.
Right? So once you've done your regulation work and you've calmed down and you've processed, then you come back and you ask if you can have a conversation about what happened with the glass.
Sure.
Right? And then that's the point at which you can package it the way that I packaged it to you.
Okay. Yeah, no.
And then for somebody who's anxious leaning, someone who's anxious leaning, when they come across unmet needs, I would suggest that they get used to meeting those needs independently. And that takes there are a couple of healthy strategies to get your needs met on your own, of course.
Obviously, and if they come to you and join your course and your coaching, they'll find out how to do that.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Just because I also want to wrap up. I mean, I want to explore other things like core wounds. What else did we speak about? Also, just attachment theory, because we've been touching on it, and people may be wondering what that
What
is.
actually is it?
So
Yeah.
just to wrap up, because I mean, this is such a big subject. You did mention something which was a keyword when you're describing the whole unmet need, like triggered, right? So, how do we identify triggers, right? And how do we know when we are triggered? Do you know what I mean? Like what's the first step? I mean, this is not something that's a quick fix, but how do I be like, shit, I've been triggered? Yeah.
Generally, how you would identify that you're triggered is ngesiZulu, when you've got a wound, isilonda. Ne? Mangakuthinta esilondeni, if I touch that wound, what am I doing? Ngiyakuthunuka.
Mm-hmm.
Right? In Zulu, that's what it is to be triggered. Ngikuthinta esilondeni, ngiyakuthunuka.
Mm-hmm.
So being triggered is me touching on a wound. That's what it is when you're triggered. And you know that you've been triggered when your reaction to what has happened is disproportionate. A glass being left on the sink is such an easily solvable problem. But for an entire fight to break out over a glass being left on the table, that implies that someone was triggered.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
So you know you're triggered if your reaction, even if it's an internal reaction. I was saying this to one of my clients yesterday, actually. There was a time when I was in a relationship and I came home and the person had been home the whole day. I'd left them at my place the whole day. And I found the dishes not washed.
Yeah.
I'm tired, I come home and I find that the dishes haven't been washed.
Yeah.
I didn't blow a gasket, right? But inside, I was boiling.
World War III.
I was boiling inside. I was boiling inside. That's when I took a step back and I was like, is it really justified to be feeling this way about the dishes not being washed?
Yeah.
You know? And that's how I know that I was triggered. It's not about the dishes. The problem is not the problem. The problem is what you've made of it. The problem is the meaning that you're making out of what you're seeing. So, how do you know you're triggered? When you look at the event and you realize that it's something that your reaction was not justified. It was
Sure.
so big. Not that it's invalid, because you have a wound and it's there and it needs to be healed. So it's understandable why you would react that way, because you've got a wound,
Sure.
right? But obviously, if that wound was healed, you wouldn't have reacted that way.
Yeah.
So triggers are actually our friends. Triggers are gifts. Triggers are good things because they show us where we need to heal. Triggers are good. They're painful and they suck. Right?
No shit, Sherlock. Like, yeah.
They're painful and they suck a lot, but they are gifts because they're directing us to the parts of ourselves that need healing.
Cam, did want to ask a question on 6 basic human needs. We'll probably get to it at the end.
Okay.
I think it's just a nice segue of speaking about wounds, right?
Okay.
Ngobumthintile, right?
Yes, yes.
Let's
yes.
talk about wounds, because the way I'm understanding this as well is you are triggered because, like, as you buchaza ngesiZulu ukuthi ungithintile yabona esilondeni.
Nakutunuka.
Yes. So obviously a trigger almost, I don't know how to put it in English, but you're triggering a wound. So talk to me about wounds and core wounds. It's obviously a big subject. When is that developed?
Where do the wounds actually
yeah,
come
where
from?
do they come from, right? Because you might be triggered, and then I'll be like, no, but why am I reacting this way? Do you know what I mean? There have been instances where I am triggered, but then you're like, no, man, why? Similar to how you're saying, is it justified to have a whole World War III within me
Yeah.
because this person didn't wash the dishes,
Yeah,
right? So,
yeah.
I mean, going deeper into, self-development and understanding yourself more, obviously it comes from somewhere, which is obviously, I'm assuming, and correct me if I'm wrong, it boils down to your core wounds, right? Or am I missing a step going down? But yeah, talk to me about core wounds. Where do they come from? And yeah, let's dabble and go down this rabbit hole.
Sure. Wounds come from trauma. What is trauma? There's a guy named Gabor Mate. He's my mentor. He just doesn't know it. It's him and a bunch of people who don't know that they're my mentors. He has this beautiful definition of trauma.
Sure.
Okay. Trauma is the meaning we create, the meaning we make. It's us trying to make sense of something that was so big we couldn't process it. Okay? When we're talking about like mental trauma, emotional trauma, it's something that happens or doesn't happen. And we make a specific interpretation of it because the brain wants to make sense of life. That's what keeps you surviving. Its job. The brain's job is to keep you surviving.
Sure.
And for you to survive, you need to know what's coming. You need to know what to expect. So it wants certainty. That's the brain's friend. The brain wants familiarity. It wants certainty. So it will make sense out of situations from the time that we're young even. So Gabor Mate defines trauma as it's the meaning we create out of everything that happened to us, which wasn't supposed to be, which wasn't supposed to happen to us, and everything that didn't happen to us, which was supposed to.
Ooh. Let's flesh that out just by
Do you want
one
an
example.
example?
Yeah,
Sure.
I told
So-
you I'm a 5-year-old.
Yes,
I
of
live
course.
by examples.
No, I like to make things relatable. So if we're talking about the one side of it, right? The one way that you can end up with trauma, the things that happen to you which were not supposed to happen to you. So for example, you are a 4-year-old and you are you're playing around, but you're in a public area and there's a road and you happen to run into the road, right? All this time your parents have been warm to you. They chuckle at your little stumbles and your mistakes and whatever. or let's say you're 2, because this is actually the point at which it happens. It's actually fun fact. That's why the honeymoon phase tends to occur between like 6 and 2 years, like 0 and 2 years generally can be honeymoon phase, but we'll get into that some other time on another podcast maybe.
sure.
But anyway, let's say you're 2 and all the time between 0 and 2, your parents have been loving and they've been very forgiving of your mistakes. You know, they don't care. In fact, they laugh at your mistakes. They've just been warm generally. Then one day you run into the street and maybe your dad shouts at you, right? You don't understand what's going on, right? Because this person has been loving this whole time. And now they shout at you. Understandably, because you were running into the road, they wanted to keep you safe, you know? And then he shouts at you in anger. Even though we understand this is necessary, he had to do what he had to do because he wanted to keep you safe. It's still traumatic. Why? Because you didn't expect it. It was so big and you were not able to process it, and there's no way for your 2-year-old brain to understand what just happened, right? And so you form a conclusion that, and kids are almost like, Gabor Mate describes them as like little narcissists. Everything is about them, right? They don't know any better. Everything is about them. So if I get shouted at by my mom, or my mom doesn't fetch me from school or whatever, I'm going to say, oh, it must be because of me. It's because of me. It's because I'm unlovable. It's because there's something wrong with me. It's because of ABC, right? I make it about me. I personalize it, right? That's where personalization starts, right? So I'm kind of losing my train of thought here. You were asking, examples. Yes. So when your dad shouted at you while you were crossing the road, maybe they even slapped your wrist because you were so excited and you were going across the road. That's traumatic. It's something that happened to you, and it was so big for your 2-year-old brain to process that it just formed a wound. So your brain was like, surely this is why. Maybe it's because you're unlovable. Maybe it's because there's something wrong with you. Maybe it's because whatever reason, right? And that becomes the wound. And then on the flip side, for things that were supposed to happen, which didn't happen to you, and this is generally how, in fact, the attachment style, dismissive avoidance, this is how they are formed. It's one of the ways that dismissive avoidant attachment styles are formed, where there are only 3 human fears, and I hope I remember all 3. It's the fear of falling, the fear of loud noises, and the fear of abandonment. Those are the only fears we're born with. We're born with them. Okay. No one programs them into us, right? Now, I want to zoom in on the fear of abandonment. These fears are necessary. The fear of falling, if you fall as a baby, you actually might die.
Night. Yeah.
You might die. If the loud noises alert you to some sort of danger that might be occurring, right? The fear of abandonment, you need connection and attunement from a caregiver in order to survive.
Sure.
Right? So you do find that some parents have their own traumas. They have their own things going on which they haven't processed and worked through, and it makes it difficult for them to connect to their children. So when a child expresses vulnerability, like through crying or through wanting to cling to the parent, they might push them away, or they might tell them stop crying because it triggers something in them. Right? It's like, stop crying, or boys don't cry, or you're making a noise, I'll give you a reason to cry, right? Those types of things. And that teaches the child that I'm not safe to express emotions. So what was supposed to happen is, when you express vulnerability and you express pain, your parent is supposed to move towards you. Your caregiver, your primary caregiver, is supposed to move towards you to help you work through that pain.
Sure.
Not push you away or shut it down or whatever. So the trauma there is, you are supposed to receive connection, attunement, attention, resolution of some sort. And you didn't receive that. And then you form a wound around that because your brain says, why is this happening? I'm supposed to be getting connection, attunement, etc., but I'm not getting it. And it goes like, well, it's because you're unlovable. It's because there's something wrong with you. That's why. And then you move through life with that wound. So those, when I say trauma, it's things that were just so big, meaningful and big, that are just so difficult to process for the young mind, that the brain just goes like, this is why.
Yeah.
This is the best reason I can come up with. Let's move forward with that.
And it's a lot to take in, by the way. with a lot of triggers as well.
Okay, I see. I'm sorry.
No, apologize. This is why I started this podcast.
Yeah, okay.
Just again, wrapping it up, and we'll chat more about cold winds. But let's go back to the example of across the street, dad hits me, shouts at me, came out of nowhere, right? Obviously, this might happen again and again, so it becomes almost the cold wind becomes what do you call it? Reaffirmed. You know, that traumatic experience, sorry, becomes reaffirmed, right? Because maybe it won't be the last time. It will happen maybe at the house or at a friend's house, whatever. How does that show up later on in your adult life,
Yeah,
right?
that's a
So,
very good question. Yeah.
like, and I probably can talk from some experience. Like, if someone shouts at you, other people might stand up, want to fight because maybe they didn't get a chance to fight when they were younger. Other people might go into a shell, right?
Yes.
Like, oh, and that comes from somewhere because the shouting is the trigger,
Yeah.
which takes you to this traumatic experience, which is a wound, right? Right. So, yeah, just take me through it. How would that show up,
Later
later
on in
on?
life.
Yeah.
All right. So we've spoken about how it's formed in childhood
Yeah.
and why the brain does that for you. Now, to get a little bit more into the reason why the brain does that for you is it's really it's not a good thing, but your brain is just trying to protect you. It's trying to keep you surviving. That's its job. Your brain's job is to protect you. Now, the way that it does this is, and how this wound is formed is it keeps record. Okay? It's like this happened, and by forming this conclusion and reacting in this way as a result, we survived that. So, because we survived that by doing this, that's how we survive in future. So, let's say, for example, in the case of, and this is, I want to go and use the one about the things that were not supposed to, or things that were supposed to happen to you which didn't, and what you made out of it. I'm going to go with the avoidant one because that one is not commonly talked about. It's not commonly spoken about. So now you were crying in your crib, for example, and no one came, right? Or you were crying as a 1.5-year-old and they spanked you because you were making too much noise, right? Or they told you, I'll give you a reason to cry,
Yeah.
or those types of things.
I know
Right?
those reasons. Yeah.
Yeah. So if we've got that type of a scenario, your brain is going to be like, okay, when I stopped crying, it made my primary caregiver be okay with sticking around. And so now my fear of abandonment is not triggered because when I don't cry, my caregiver does not move away from me. I want them to stay here. And when I don't cry, they stay. Right? So what does it do? It teaches me that when I express my needs, because when a child cries, that's how they're expressing
Yeah.
their needs.
Uh-huh.
When I don't cry, then I don't feel the discomfort that comes with having a caregiver leave me or move away from me, right? It teaches them that when I don't express my needs, I don't feel pain.
Jeez.
When I express my needs, people move away from me. And I don't like that. And it gets so deeply embedded in the mind. And the brain says when we do this, we survive. So we keep this. We keep this because it's so familiar. The next time it happens, we'll know how to deal with it. The brain likes familiarity. It likes certainty, right? So now we're dealing with 47-year-old Mnoto. He's 47.
And he's very handsome and successful with a lot of money. You know, but yes.
Now, 47 years down the line, Mnoto's in a relationship. Mnoto's girlfriend wants more intimacy. She wants to have deeper, meaningful conversations. She wants to spend time with Mnoto. And remember, Mnoto as a child found that either connection or needs, they feel bad. They're painful. They don't feel nice. Intimacy, connection, expression of needs, vulnerability, because that's what it is.
Yeah.
Vulnerability does not feel good. Now, 47 years down the line, Mnoto's in a relationship and they're having communication issues. They're having, intimacy issues because Nota's just not a fan of opening up, right? But there's a reason. There's a reason Noto doesn't say when. There's a reason Noto doesn't even know when he needs something.
Sure.
Because from the time that he was 2 and no one came to attend to him, he learned that when I express my needs, no one comes. So I have to learn to meet them myself or suppress them completely.
Sure.
And so now as an adult, he's somebody who is completely repressed, somebody who doesn't feel his emotions, someone who feels no need to express how he feels about things and people. His girlfriend is like, you never tell me that you love me. Why do you never tell me? Why do you never tell me how you feel about me? Right? It's because you can't. He suppressed that ability as a child because he learned that when I do that, it feels painful.
Sure. Yeah, we'll let the silence kick in as well. Drop the mic there, by the way. Cool.
Comfort break.
That was no. I want to wrap up the core wounds. I want to ask about obviously first. I mean, we kind of alluded to how to identify maybe core wounds, but maybe the tools to start the healing journey. But also have notes here where I was like, also talk to me about BTEA because that's something that really stuck with me as well. I'm trying to also remember where it came from. I know it's around core wounds,
Yeah.
right? So you can start either or. You can start with the BTEA, right? But I also want to know how do we, and I think this is the most important part, of the podcast because I believe everything comes or stems from your core wounds, which has your triggers and creates trauma and. So how do we begin the journey of healing? So yeah, either or.
Okay. So BTEA. I'm gonna make it even a lot more simple. And it's a joke that you crack a lot, actually. Why are you the way that you
Yeah.
are? You say that a lot. So we've spoken about wounding, and I'm glad that we started there or that we spent a lot of time there. So now all of these wounds they create your belief system. They influence what you believe about life, about people, about yourself. Right? Your wounds will form that filter.
Sure.
Okay? Think of the way you view life. Thais Gibson describes it as, imagine the way that you view life as a windscreen.
Sure.
Okay? But your windscreen has let's say there's a splatter of mud, there's a bug splatter there's a crack there, it's blurry, right? You can't see clearly through that windscreen. And if you drive, you will constantly be like, how easy is it going to be to drive with
It's
a blurry
not.
windscreen with
Of
stuff all over it
course
and
not.
gunk and whatever? It's not going to be easy, right? You'll probably hit a couple of things. You'll maybe get into a few accidents, etc. It's not going to be easy to navigate the road with a blurry windscreen, a dirty windscreen.
100%.
Think of your core wounds as the dirt on the windscreen.
Okay.
The way you view life depends on the wounds, the dirt on the windscreen. It depends on that. And the more you heal the wounds, the clearer your windscreen becomes.
Fire my wiper.
Exactly. Right? So, in terms of healing, it's about clearing the windscreen, it's about healing the wounds. Okay? That's how you get healing. You start at the wound level. You can, of course, use other methods, right? And that's when we now touch on the subconscious mind where everything is housed.
All right.
Like 90 to 95% of everything you are as a person, comes from your subconscious mind. Only 5 to 10% is in your conscious mind. Okay, so your conscious mind is where your ideas are developed, your goals, your desires.
Sure.
They start here. Prefrontal cortex, your conscious mind. Okay, everything else is in your subconscious mind, right there at the back. Right. So let's say you are my conscious mind. So let's say you are 5% as strong as I am. And we get involved in a tug of war today and Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday and Friday and Saturday, right? All of those days. Who's going to win?
it would be the 95% person, right? The
I'm going to win
subconscious.
every
Yeah.
time. Every time I'll
Mm-hmm.
win, right? And that's exactly what happens with the subconscious mind, right? I've digressed severely here.
No, we're going to BTEA, right?
Yes. So your beliefs, they're housed in your subconscious mind, and
Sure.
because that's stronger, even though the glass on the counter is an objective event, it's something that's so easily solvable. But because you've got core wounds around feeling unloved and
Sure.
disrespected and not mattering and being unimportant and etc., those things are going to cause you to create all of that meaning around the glass being left over there.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas somebody that doesn't have that type of wounding will be like, hey, next time when you drink water, can you please just rinse the glass and put it in the cupboard? Problem solved. Just like that.
Yeah.
Right? So that's somebody with the clear windscreen
Sure.
or with less dirt on the windscreen.
100%.
Right? Cool. So how and this ultimately okay. So this ultimately ends up in the fight, how we react. But the sequence that this happens in is the belief is londa, the wound
Yeah.
was triggered. Utunuweyin, the glass being left on the counter.
Sure.
That's what triggered you, right? So you go from that, and because that was your trigger, you were like, I'm unloved, I'm disrespected, I don't matter, I'm not important to this person.
Are these now
etc.
your thoughts, right?
These are your core wounds.
Okay.
And your core wounds create your thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
right? Vele, he never considers me. Vele, he doesn't love me. And sometimes, yes, your core wound will come out directly,
Sure.
right? It'll come out as a thought. I'm not loved here,
Yeah.
right? So we go from beliefs to thoughts. They create the thoughts. Your beliefs will create how you think about things.
Sure.
And those thoughts, there's no such thing as an idle thought, ever.
Yeah.
So when somebody says to you, what are you thinking? And they say nothing, it's likely that's not true. We think about 60 to 70,000 thoughts per day.
Yeah.
Per day, right? So the chances that somebody's not thinking anything are very low. And usually when you ask somebody, what are you thinking? It's because you can tell that they're feeling something,
Yeah.
judging from how they're behaving. So the chances that they're thinking nothing are not very high, right?
Yeah.
So beliefs, but don't force people to tell
Yeah.
you what they're thinking if they're not comfortable. Beliefs lead to your thoughts. Your thoughts lead to what you feel. How do you feel when you believe you're not loved?
Look, and I remember when we went through this, I have a hard time identifying my emotions, right? Because feelings are emotions, right? If you would agree with that. So if you feel unloved, you may feel sad, right?
Feel
Which
sad.
is you see, I'm getting better at
Well
identifying emotions.
done. Well done.
Feel
You'll
sad.
feel sad. That's one of the
yeah,
emotions.
you could
yes.
feel anger.
You could feel anger. True.
What yo? Yeah, let's just go with those two
That's okay.
basic
That's
ones.
perfectly
Yeah,
fine. I think you did good there.
because I've had trouble. Yeah, yeah,
So you'll feel sad. Maybe you'll feel disappointed. Maybe
Yeah.
you'll feel angry, depending on how you're wired, right?
sure.
So you'll feel a certain thing. And when you feel sad, how do you behave?
I mean, people will behave differently, but you may, if I feel sad, for example, you may go into a shell, right?
You might withdraw.
And you just want to be alone. Yeah,
Exactly.
withdraw.
Yes.
Other people, when they feel sad, they might look for attention.
They might look-
because
exactly.
they want to be seen.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, there's different ways we will act, and I'm assuming
Exactly.
your emotions then lead to your actions, right? Which is the A part of this.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right.
So your core wound, your belief about yourself or the person or the world was triggered. Wound triggered, right?
Mm-hmm.
It led you to think something.
Yeah.
When you thought that thing, thoughts never occur in isolation. They will always be followed by an emotion.
Sure.
You thought something, it led you to feel something, which then led you to behave a certain way.
Yeah.
And even so, there's something I want to challenge, a common perception that I want to challenge about the workplace, that, oh, don't be so emotional in the workplace, right? Oh, don't make such emotional, all decisions are emotional.
Yeah.
Every single one of them. And I'm going to give you an example. I come to you and I present an idea to you, and I'm just pulling this out of the top of my head. So I come to you and I present an idea to you, right? That idea is going to trigger some belief in you, right? That belief then leads you to think something about what I'm presenting to you.
Sure.
Thoughts don't occur in isolation. You then feel something, which will inform your decision. So you might be presenting something to me, and maybe I already have the belief that Mnoto doesn't like me. Mnoto disrespects me, right? He thinks he knows more than me. He's so arrogant. All these thoughts start coming up. Then I feel what? I feel resentment. I feel anger, maybe. All types of things. And then they lead me to behave a certain way. And that behavior is going to inform, or rather, that emotion is going to inform my decision. Because the decision is, you can think of it like an action. Yes, a decision is an action.
Yeah.
Yes, it is an action. And then somebody rubbishes your idea. Or I rubbish your idea because I've already got these things around you. Right? Decisions are absolutely emotional. All of them are emotional. All of them are emotional. We wouldn't have wars if they didn't.
Sure. Hi, Oprah. Let us take a quick comfort break.
Cool.
And then we'll come back just for the second half or even like the last quarter. It's a lot.
It is a
Oprah.
lot. It is a lot. Mnoto. It really, really is.
Oprah
It's a
Tebogo.
deep rabbit hole.
Yeah, and then there's other just topics I want to explore, but
Okay.
I felt like we needed to talk about core wins. And
It's
I
a
love,
heavy one. It's
it is. Because now Pela Utindisklonda manje, because you will talking about core wins will trigger you. Because you're gonna be
Yes.
like, you're putting it together, it's a light
Yeah.
bulb. But on that
Yeah.
note, let's take a break and then we'll be back, you know.
Okay.
So, welcome back after that longer than expected break. I think we needed it.
Yeah.
It was a lot. Where are my notes? So, just to also wrap up core wounds, because I mean, we did end off at a very deep place as well. We were speaking about healing, right? And I know through the whole IET framework, there are different tools you can use after you've identified core wounds,
Yeah.
etc. Right? So one of them was, if I remember correctly, belief reprogramming, right?
Yeah.
But I'm sure there's also other tools. So can you, number one, take me through the different tools to either, maybe not even identify your wounds, because we've spoken at length about that, but to start to heal your wounds. And then take me through just a basic example of one of the tools, you know.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've spoken about how a lot of this stuff is based in the subconscious mind, right? Your wounding, what you think about life, your emotional patterns, meaning the emotions you will tend to feel more often. All of that stuff, your needs, how you're going to communicate, that stuff comes from your subconscious mind.
Sure.
All of those things there, right? So the tools that you can use are informed by what is actually effective for getting you healing, right? Now,
Okay.
we've spoken about BTEA. Your beliefs create your thoughts create your emotions lead to your actions. Right? So you can intercept in terms of healing or reprogramming, as Thais calls it, at any of these 4 points. You can create healing at the belief level. You can create healing at the thought level, emotion level, action level as well. You can intercept at any of those points, meaning you can hack yourself at any of those points. You're literally hacking yourself, right? Because if you think about it, these wounds are your programming.
Yeah.
But it's not just wounds that form your programming. There are other things, of course. It's not all negative.
Sure.
Right? So you can reprogram yourself ultimately, is what I'm saying. Right? And you can do that at any of these 4 points.
Sure.
So if I'm to select 2, I'm going to select must I select my favorites or the ones that just come to mind? Whatever. But the one that I will mention is the belief level reprogramming, which is probably the quickest if you commit to it. Right? So you can go straight to the subconscious mind. It's not accessible in any other way.
Yeah.
The reason is your subconscious mind is programmed. We spoke about being programmed, right? At 2, when all of these things happen,
Sure.
and again between 2 and 8, you are being programmed. And the reason is your brain is in a semi-hypnotic state. It is emitting, I think it's alpha and either beta or theta brain waves, and those are the ones that are required in order to get you into a hypnotic state.
Okay.
So at those ages, you are in that state. So to reprogram, you would need to get yourself back into that state.
Sure.
But also you need to speak to your subconscious mind in a language that it understands. And it does not understand words. It doesn't understand words. It doesn't understand. You can only speak to it through visualization
Sure.
and emotion. Meaning you can leverage memories for that. So let's park that for now. So one of the most potent and effective tools that you can use to reprogram your subconscious mind is something that's called autosuggestion. Again, it's part of the Gibson integrated attachment theory framework, where it's so different to affirmations, and I'm not a supporter of affirmations at all, because affirmations work in your conscious mind, and we mentioned previously that here is only like
About 5%. Yeah.
5%, exactly. So you want to leverage the 95%,
Sure.
right? So to reprogram, you need to identify the core wound, and then you find its opposite.
Okay.
So for example, there's something wrong with me. That's one of the core wounds. And in this framework that I use, that I'm certified in, right, there are like 21 core wounds. One of them is I'm defective, or there's something wrong with me. So if we're to choose there's something wrong with me, the opposite of that is there's nothing wrong with me, or a lot is going right with me, or a lot is right with me, or I think you're kind of getting where I'm going with this. There are other core wounds like I am unloved. You can get the opposite of that and say I am loved, right? So, for example, to reprogram, if we're to maybe, let's use I am unloved. If you've got the core wound of feeling unloved, right, of being unloved, you take I am loved, and then you go and you find evidence for that, right? So you have to find evidence. Why? Because again, the subconscious mind is programmed through emotion and visualization and repetition of those things. Or if it's so largely traumatic, then you can be programmed that way as well. Okay, so because you probably won't encounter something that's just so charged with positive emotion that you're able to reprogram immediately. It's possible. I'm not saying it's impossible. I mean, it is possible, but practically speaking, you'll probably want to leverage things that are more accessible.
Sure.
And those things are memories. So if we're talking about I am loved, then we go and find evidence. You go and you find the different ways in which you are loved. You go and you find examples. There was that time when I was sick and my friend Ubered some soup over to my place, which shows that I am loved. And you find similar examples. You leverage memories. And that's one way that you can reprogram and ultimately get to a point where the wounding doesn't necessarily affect you as much as it would. And that's how you clear that windscreen, by healing the wounds in that way. Okay.
There was something I also wanted to ask as you were talking, right? In terms of finding the opposite, we can use I am loved still, since we're on that train of thought. How important is it to use positive words, right? Because you can be like, I am unloved, and the opposite is I am not unloved, right?
Yeah.
But not.
Or I am defective, I am not defective.
I'm not
Or
defective.
I am bad,
right?
I am not bad.
And people might be like, it's semantics, but I do think choice of words is also very important.
Yeah.
And obviously, maybe using positive, using positive words. And where this comes from, I remember it's almost like when you're about to give a speech, right? And using affirmations. Saying, I'm not gonna, excuse the French, I'm not gonna fuck up, I'm not gonna fuck up, I'm not gonna fuck up. It's an affirmation, but it's just your choice of words, right? Versus saying, I'm gonna do well, this is gonna go great, you know? Nerves are great, you know? I'm excited. It's still this, and I think you've mentioned this before where you say, was it you? But I've also listened to just a lot of people speak or talk, like the mind doesn't know the difference between what you're thinking and reality.
Yes.
Right?
It doesn't, yeah.
So.
And you can use that to your advantage.
Yes, you know. So in saying that, obviously, I'm not going to fuck up is obviously going to trigger some emotional response, or yeah. Anyways, where I was going with all of this, because I like going on little tangents, is how important is it to actually use positive words?
It is 100% important. It's 100% important because your brain doesn't understand negatives. I'm not going to fuck up. I'm not going to fuck up. It's going to find ways for you to fuck up. Why? The reason is, yeah, like I said, it doesn't understand negatives. It only understands what you feed it. The not is, it's like, it's almost non-existent. So if I tell you, for example, don't think about the chocolate chip cookie,
I'm gonna think about it now.
you probably got like a picture of a chocolate chip cookie in your mind, and you can't control that, right? But I did say don't. Why did you think of the chocolate chip cookie?
Interesting.
Right? So that's how your brain works. And that's the importance when you're doing this reprogramming work. You mustn't use negatives, right? Use positives, right? So if you're dealing with the I am bad core wound, which is one of the 21 core wounds, you want to go for I am innocent. Not I am good, because I'm
Oh,
good
I'm
is
not.
like has other.
I am not
I'm
bad.
not bad.
I'm not bad. Yeah.
It's I am innocent. If you want to go for I am unloved and heal I am unloved, you want to take the root of I am
Loved.
loved, right? Not I am not unloved. And if you go for, I don't know, I will be betrayed, which is another core wound, right? The opposite of that would be I can trust. Okay, so that's the thing. Your brain will take the negative as an instruction, and it will focus on that because of and we can talk about this in another podcast rather. The reticular activating system. As soon as you feed it an instruction, it will filter everything else out, and it will go straight for what you're going for. So if you say, "I won't mess up this presentation," your brain's going to go like, let's go find evidence for all the times he messed up a presentation and then show him that he's going to mess it up. And then we're going to find ways for him to mess up this presentation. And then you wonder why you messed up that presentation. It's because you fed it instructions
It's
to
a
mess up that
vicious
presentation.
circle. Yeah.
Yes.
So, Tebogo, I mean, we're coming towards the end of obviously this wonderful, deep podcast.
Yeah.
You know, I did wanna obviously. It would be remiss of me to not obviously speak about IAT, integrated attachment theory.
Yes.
Right, finally got it. And I wanted to end with it because if we started with it, we can also lose people and obviously different terminologies. But
Yeah.
we do need to speak about it because that's what you are trained in,
Yeah.
which allows you to speak in such confidence.
It makes me credible, I guess.
Yeah, well, okay, at least you said, yeah.
It gives me the authority to speak about these things.
You know, so I want us. So I want to just talk about that, and then there's also just some notes that I have here from our different sessions, which I'd love to just explore. It's like one or two things that I wrote down. But anyways, speaking of, yeah, let's talk about IAT, what it is, what are the different attachment styles, and yeah, we'll take it from there. I'll have more questions.
Yes, sure. So integrated attachment theory, as I said, I personally think of it as applied attachment theory.
Sure.
Attachment theory says that there are 4 ways in which you can relate to people or you can engage with people. And absolutely simplified is there are 4 ways that you can be in your different relationships. Okay,
Sure.
there are 4 types of rule sets that you can follow when you have relationships with different people: work, friendships, relationships, family, etc. It is basically how you attach to people, right? So it's your rules of attachment. That's what an attachment style is. It's the rules you follow for attaching to someone, but you don't write those rules. They're written for you in childhood.
No.
So the traumas that you're subjected to are the formation of the rules that you will use to relate, to attach to people in different relationships.
Okay.
Does it make sense?
Yeah.
So those rules, you're not even aware that they're operational. You're not aware that these rules are playing a role in how you talk to people, how you interpret events, how you communicate, the things that you expect in a relationship, right? The beliefs you have about people, yourself, the world, right? And those are the components, actually, of integrated attachment theory.
Oh, okay.
So we're not saying everything revolves around attachment theory,
Sure.
which is common now in like pop psychology. Like, oh, it's their attachment style because they're
Yeah, I've
this,
seen that actually. Yeah,
they're gonna do this. And I think we're losing out on so much by just boiling everything down to an attachment style, because
yeah.
there's so much more that's going on, right? So when we speak of integrated attachment theory, we're saying there's attachment theory, which is an entry point, and it tells us what we can expect from you because there's certain rules that you use for operating in your different relationships.
Sure.
Okay? So what we're saying with integrated attachment theory is it is a predictor. Your attachment style is a predictor of what you will believe about the world and the people in the world and yourself. It's also a predictor of what you will need because of what you believe, because of your wounds, right? It's also a predictor of the types of emotions you will feel more often. You've got access to a range of emotions, and you will feel a range of emotions, but there are certain set because of your attachment style that you'll feel more often. It's also a predictor of what you will think about boundaries and how you will approach boundaries. Okay? It's also a predictor of your communication, how you will talk to people, how you will prefer to be spoken to as well, right? It's also a predictor of how you will behave, the things that you will do, and what you will expect from people as well, just your general expectations. And when you're wounded, when you've got any of the three insecure attachment styles, which I'll very quickly skim through, your expectations will generally be unrealistic. Okay, so that's integrated attachment theory. It's just telling us that your attachment style is a predictor of these 7 components I've just listed.
Sure.
Okay, your core wounds, meaning what you believe about the world and yourself, your needs, your emotions, your boundaries, how you will go about boundaries, how you're going to communicate, your behaviors, and your expectations in the different relationships that you have. That's basically integrated attachment theory.
Lovely summary, right? Um, and can you give me an example? And I have a note here actually from one of our sessions,
Yeah.
and I wanted to talk about it. Like, and I know obviously people must read up, come to your sessions as well to understand the attachment styles. So I mean, we don't have time to reveal them all. You know, you can read them up, but I'd also encourage people to actually come and speak to you because it is a personal journey. It's not something you
It
can
is.
do just for the whole world. You know, because every one of us is unique, right? And we have different attachment styles. Anyways, me go on my tangents again. um, attachment style example in relationships, right? So I remember we were speaking about this. So I want you to talk about the attachment style. Whereas, for example, as a lady, you might say, he is boring. Meanwhile, it's not that the person is, you just like chaos, right? I had to write it like that, you know?
You know how many times I've heard that one in the past, 3 weeks?
I says that no, Justin, he's just. There's many terms. He's perfect. He's just and just no excitement. And I remember it's like maybe not.
There's
There's
no
maybe
passion.
yeah, right. But maybe there's a case of just you, you like chaos.
You just like
right?
chaos.
So first of all, like talk to me about this. Maybe tie it back into that relationship and how it is from an attachment style. And we'll just talk about one attachment style in this. Yeah.
Okay. We can talk about the fearful avoidant because fearful avoidants are create their bread out of chaos. With the fearful avoidant, they've been subjected to a fair amount of trauma. They are, because they've got elements of the dismissive avoidant, and maybe we can talk about the individual attachment styles like it's at a
No,
later stage, some other time. But they've got elements of 2 attachment styles plus their own unique attachment styles. So they're a combination of dismissive avoidant and anxiously attached. And the reason is, in summary, and to just like simplify it, they just never knew what to expect as kids. They had very unpredictable circumstances and caregivers, and so they constantly had to be aware of the chaos around them and manage the chaos around them.
Sure.
But because as kids, remember, we're born with 3 biological fears, and the fear of abandonment makes us seek out connection. So while we're seeking out this connection, we're being programmed to believe that chaos is normality, chaos is love. And when you grow up, remember, you grow up with these core wounds. I love how you actually led us into that, actually, because now I can leverage that and we can go into it. But the core wounds lead you to believe that this is how you survive in the world. This is how you get love in the world. If it's not chaos, it's not love. Because while you're being programmed in childhood, while you're looking for connection and you're getting chaos, you believe that, okay, chaos is love. So when you get into a relationship in future, even though you might be getting in, you might seek out a chaotic relationship. And I remember dealing with a client and I was like, is it possible that you're actually looking for chaos? And he said, no. And I was like, but look at what's happening around you. And he was like, no. Why? Because it's so normalized for him. It's normalized
Sure.
for him. It's normal for him, right? He's used to chaos, right? So he won't even know that he's looking for it.
Yeah.
But your subconscious mind, because it's created this comfort zone around chaos, it will always look for circumstances that are chaotic and it will stay there. If it's chaotic, I want it because that's love, right? Now, if somebody like that comes across somebody who is secure, more balanced, less wounding, clear windscreen or clearish windscreen, that person is going to appear boring because they're not going to trigger them in the same way, right? And that's where that comes from, that he's boring. Like there's just, oh, what's wrong with him? I don't know. He's just like, he's not exciting.
So
I just don't have, and I've heard this as well, I just don't get those butterflies. I don't get there's no chemistry,
Yeah.
right? But a healthy kind of love is a slow burn kind of love, most times. If you're not maybe going to grow secure with each other and do the work together and ultimately become secure. Generally, when you deal with a secure person, you might think they're boring.
So
You might actually think they're boring.
quick sneaky question on that, right? So you do, let's say you find yourself in that scenario, which I believe a lot of people do. I won't generalize, but you'll probably find yourself in a scenario where I might say she's boring or vice versa. Where does the onus lie? Like, who should go and fix themselves, right? Because there's going to be finger pointing. And I don't even want to use the word fix, right? But you're fearful avoidance and you don't even know you're in a chaotic state. And you'll probably say your partner is boring. Everyone, so we're all living in our own worlds. Is it, and where I'm going with this, is the onus on both parties to just go through the journey to understand, the dynamics of the relationship? I know it always takes work. Someone has to initiate. That I will admit, right? Be the bigger person if you want to talk about that, right? Yeah, but this whole journey, is it, for example, if I'm the fearful avoidance and I'm saying that person is boring, should then I look within myself and say, actually, and I know this takes a lot of self-development, so there's a lot of caveats in all of this. Maybe let me go work on myself, right? Instead of trying to change this person and make them more exciting. Or is it the other way around to say, maybe be more exciting, right? Or maybe not chaos, but Nje, also have that passion. Or is it a two-way street? I hope you understand my question.
I understand your
Yeah.
question, and it's a good question. So, there are a couple of things. The one is, if you perceive the other person to be boring, and you're inclined to leave the relationship, there are a couple of things that need to go into the relationship before you actually leave it. You can't just leave.
Sure.
There are a couple of questions that need answering. Have you done everything in your power to make sure that that relationship works? Or did you just leave? Did you just flee? Which is a common fearful avoidant response, by the way. They flee. Flight is their
Please start to
it's their
share
favorite.
pants. One time.
Share pants, exactly. Exactly. So, man, and one thing I learned, and I spoke to this earlier on, change takes place only when you're ready. And usually when you're ready, you're probably in the most pain.
Yeah, I want to add to that they say change takes place when the pain of staying the same is more than
Yeah.
the pain of changing.
Exactly,
Right? Yeah.
exactly. If you'll allow, and if you'll allow, I'll give you a story that it stuck probably because the person who told it was speaking to two things that mean a lot to me. He spoke about a dog and he spoke about pain,
Okay.
you know? And it stuck with me as a result. So he was like, there was this guy who was sitting on the side of the road with a dog beside him. And that dog was bleeding and it was wailing in pain, right? But the dog was on, I think, a spike in the ground, and it was just sitting on that spike.
Oh.
It was on that spike and it was stabbing into the dog.
Mm.
So it's understandable that that dog was in immense pain.
Mm-hmm.
But the owner just sat there, listening to the dog wailing in pain.
Oh, wow.
He goes up to the owner and he's like, why aren't you helping your dog? And this guy's like, no, it's not necessary. He's like, he asks him again. He's like, but why? Why? He nags him up until this guy gets to a point where he's like, listen, when the dog has felt enough pain, it's going to get up.
Oh.
And that's ultimately like, it stuck with me. I know it's a very graphic example, but it stuck with me. And I've found it to kind of be true in a couple of circumstances. I won't say all. You don't have to go through pain in order to change. Sometimes it just makes logical sense. Sometimes it just appeals to something that's meaningful to you, and so you go for the change. Other times it takes pain for you to move you to the point where you change. So that's a long-winded way for me to say the onus is on you as the person that is finding flaws in the person that you're calling boring, right? So the onus, what that looks like, or taking ownership of that situation looks like you expressing your needs. Like there's nothing wrong with wanting some excitement in your relationship, but the onus is on you to express that need. There's nothing wrong in you wanting adventure, but the onus is on you to express the need and what you want it to look like, right? I've got a need to explore different things, and what that looks like is us traveling every now and then, you know? So I would say primarily in a scenario like that, the onus lies on the person that finds fault or that is uncomfortable, the person with the unmet need.
Yeah.
The onus is on the person with the unmet need.
100%. It's been, I'm also very respectful of your time as well. So my last question, which was also from our sessions as well, right? There was a note here as well that I wrote that emotions are a reflection of the mind in the body. Can you elaborate on that?
And then he starts an entirely new topic.
Might as well. Grenade.
Yes, so emotions are sensations. Just like hunger pangs are sensations. You feel the hunger in your body, and then it stimulates a response.
Sure.
Right? You feel hungry, and so you get up and you go make yourself a sandwich. Right? You feel thirsty, you get up and you go get some water. You feel sad, you need to understand why you're feeling sad, and then express a need. There's probably an unmet need there. Hey, I've been feeling disconnected from you this week, and I'd really like it if we could go for date night this week. Like tomorrow night, can we go to the movies just to reconnect? Because we've been really busy, and it's made me disconnected from you, made me feel disconnected from you, right? Versus starting a fight.
Yeah.
And here's the interesting thing. Sorry, fun fact. If I could just throw it in there, you can
Please
include
do.
it if you want to or not, right? When there's disconnection between two people, right, in a relationship, sometimes because there's an unmet need for connection.
Yeah.
If you don't know how to get that need met in a healthy way, you would actually start a fight. If you don't know a better way, you start a fight, and the reason is
Looking for a response, right?
No, not even. When you're fighting, you are emotionally connected, whether you like it or not. So it's about not knowing a better way to get your needs met.
Sure.
So yeah.
So, Debo, I think we can end it there because I have many other notes, and we'll obviously open up another can of worms, which I would love to discuss in podcast part 2, part 3.
Okay.
I think I want to wrap up if it's even possible. Everything we've spoken about, right? Because this is what I asked you after, our 12-week
Yeah.
session. Um, is it even possible? I don't know if it's possible to wrap up everything we've spoken about. So obviously we started off at suffering, we went into emotions, then we touched on core wounds, and then we ended off with attachment theory. And for me, it's almost like, is there a mind map, in terms of what's the one takeaway someone can go out with from this podcast to say, okay, ngiqale kuphi? Where should I start? Do I start off, at ask myself the question, why am I suffering? Or do I go into my childhood and try and identify my core wounds, right? Obviously, they must come see you and we're going to find out, how they can reach you. But, or do I first, we didn't get to even speak about this, identifying emotions. I think, look, I hate generalizing, but there's also a subset of guys, a cohort of guys, if you want to call it that, where we don't know how to express our feelings because we don't know how to even identify emotions. That's just another topic in itself.
It
Like,
is.
how do you identify emotions? Like, okay, I'm feeling sad, or, like, that's offish, Like, do I start off with my emotions? Do I start off with my beliefs or just always question my thoughts? Do you know what I mean? So maybe not wrapping it up because it's going to be tough to do, but where should one start? Or the one takeaway, maybe. Like, let me start off with that premise to saying, I want to work more on this. I don't know what this is, but I want to dive deeper. As you've been saying also on your Instagram channel, which you'll say after this as well, there's a lot of triggers when you say different things, So, yeah, where to from here?
Oof. Wow. That is that's an amazing question, which I've never in my life been asked since I started doing this work. So, where you would start, I would say start by very simply observing yourself. Observe yourself. What are the things that upset you? At the end of the day, literally, at the end of each day, sit down and look at your patterns. Okay? So today, just one thing a day. One thing a day. At 5:37 this evening, I felt sad because Mnoto did that. Then you do the same thing tomorrow. And you do the same thing the day after that. And you do the same thing the day after that. And then you'll start to see a pattern. I tend to feel these emotions very often. And they're triggered by these types of events. I feel these emotions mostly when this type of thing happens. Right? And that's a starting point. Right? That's a starting point. I always lament the fact that we don't get taught emotional literacy in schools. I wish we did.
Yeah.
I really wish we did. And the tools are things that you have to get taught.
Yeah.
Right? You have to get taught those tools, or you can follow my page.
Yeah.
But just start there. I would say start there. At the end of each day, look at the things that made you feel a certain type of way.
Sure.
If you felt an emotion that you're not always comfortable feeling, sit with it. And write down in pen, because writing down literally does engage certain parts of the brain that
Sure.
encode things a little bit better. So at the end of the day, reflect and be like, okay, today I felt this way because that happened. And then you do the same thing over and over and over, and then you'll start to see the patterns. And then from there, you can actually have something of substance, and you can come to somebody that is equipped with the tools to help you unpack and work to heal those things that you've uncovered. You don't even need to know about core wounds. You don't even need to know about the intricacies of integrated attachment theory. You don't. Just sit down and reflect, and you'll see your patterns. I still do it even today.
100%. So, Tebogo, before my closing remarks, where can people find you if they are ready to be emotionally opened, if that's even a word, or this journey? Because to be honest, I remember I started myself what was this self-development journey, what, 10, 11 years ago. Um, and obviously still on the journey. Probably doesn't end. You get to know yourself better, understand yourself deeper. And it's not an easy journey.
No.
So it's not. It is for everyone, but only when you're ready.
And
If
I honestly, I'm sorry to interject, but honestly, I, I can't commend enough people like you who have the courage to sit down and look at the parts of themselves that not many people have an easy time looking at. Every single client who comes in my direction and says, I want to work on this, I'm like, geez, that's a huge step. That's a huge step. So I honestly want to take my hat off to you and to anyone else,
yeah,
like you and anyone else that has that courage to look at themselves and be like, okay, this is not easy to look at, but it's something worth working on.
exploring.
So
So yeah, on that note, where can people find you
okay.
once they're ready?
When they're ready, when you're ready, you can find me on Instagram. I do have a page. I have started a YouTube channel and I'll start populating it with time. On Instagram, I am Grow with Tebogo, at Grow with Tebogo. And my phone number's on the page as well. You can email me as well. My
And we'll
details are on
link
the
it and
page.
all the details. Yeah,
Yes, 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 yes. Please do.
phone number as well.
Yes, yes. You can reach me
Jeez,
on
are you
WhatsApp
brave?
too.
Yo.
Uh, it's on
No,
the
what about
page.
if people want to share you like?
No, they won't succeed. I've got
Oh,
boundaries. I'm a coach. I can
okay,
have boundaries. I know how
okay.
to use them.
Yeah, no, you
so,
better. Okay,
so yeah, that's where you can find me. That's primarily where you
amazing,
can find me. Yeah, go to my Instagram page. I will start populating as well on or publishing on TikTok as well,
amazing.
and YouTube
And
with
I
time.
guess obviously once people reach out to you, whether it's through Instagram, your phone number for some reason,
Yeah,
or email as well, I guess then they'll take it from there in terms of the next steps and
yes,
going on the journey, right?
100%. I
And
offer
I'm
I
just,
offer 30 minute free consultations as well. So
oh, okay, awesome.
just
And
as a start.
oh, nice. And then if they are happy with the service and they want to carry on, is it like a standard 12-week course? Because that's the one I did, or do you have different ones?
Yeah, I do have different service offerings
Okay.
now. So I do have I do have two 3 month plans where you get to work with me one on one. Excuse me. I've also got one on one sessions. So ad hoc if you
Sure.
just want to get a session with me. And then I've also got support ad hoc sessions. So after you've taken the 3 month session, you can get like ad hoc sessions at a discounted rate. In addition to this, I'm going to launch within the next month monthly webinars
Yes.
as well as group sessions per attachment style and
Hola.
also just generalized for like the different tools that you can use to thrive in the various areas of life. So
Amazing.
yeah, group sessions, individual sessions, one-on-one, etc. So
Tebogo, again, look, I want to, as I said at the beginning of the podcast, thank you very much for your time. It's been an enjoyable evening. I feel like we went through my whole 12-week process
in
again
one
by
evening.
having, this conversation. So thank you very much for this. I think it's always good to just have these types of conversations for people that are interested. There's a lot still to talk about, but I'm glad we've begun the conversation.
Yeah.
I do hope people find the courage, because I always say it takes courage as well to go on this journey. It starts there, so I hope they do find the courage to go deeper within themselves, and especially through you. Look, I don't know the stats. I don't know if there's a lot of black females doing this within South Africa, within Africa. I don't know. I have to research, but I do think working with you, being from South Africa, is very relatable, especially for the audiences that are here. So I want to thank you for also availing yourself and, putting yourself out there, because I know
Thank
this
you.
also took a lot to start,
It did.
and it also, look, kudos to you, because you are dealing with a lot of people's baggage as well. So kudos to you for doing your part on the world and your service, to the population. So I want to thank you for that. And then finally, thank you for coming on to the podcast. which I don't know when the next episode will be, but this was great. My creative juices are flowing again, so I want to thank you for that. It's also a bit selfish of me because I just wanted to talk
I'm
again.
so glad.
So
We
thank you
need
for
more
that.
of this. We need to see more of your podcast.
We
though.
shall see.
We need to see more.
I need money.
I hear
But thank you, Tebogo, very much.
Thank you
for
so
that.
much, Not. I really appreciate you giving me the platform and having me on your podcast. I'm honored, honestly. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks a lot.